Estás viendo Canal América, televisión dominicana para el mundo.
A Time for True show is sponsored by the Office of Dr. Bernard Fialkoff, a periodontal, dental implant and laser specialist in New York City, for over 40 years. Dr. Fialkoff was honored by the International College of Dentists and Pierre Fauchard, and received the Presidential Lifetime Humanitarian Honor from the White House. Call us at 718-229-3838.
Sometimes life can be so damn hard. You don't know where to go. Everything keeps falling apart. Yeah. You try to do your best, but only God knows that you've given everything you've got, but the world takes you down. You just keep moving on. Let your fears.
Welcome to A Time for Truth show. It's a pleasure to have you back with us again tonight. And I'm your host, Dr. Bernard Fialkoff. We have a really good show tonight because it has to do with our country. And you know, our country was founded by very strong leaders. And when the going gets tough, and when there's conflict, and when liberty is at stake, it just seems to be that we need strong leaders because things just don't gravitate in the right direction unless they're guided there by a strong hand. And tonight we're very lucky to have someone with us all the way from Orlando, Florida, an engineer. If you can put him up on the screen, would like to introduce former Commissioner Samuel B. Ings of Orlando. There you go. Who was raised by a mother who was a pastor, and his father, who was the city of Orlando's first African-American detective. Commissioner Ings graduated from Boone High School in 1970 and received an associate degree from Valencia Community College, a bachelor's and 2 master's degrees from Rollins College, and a master's degree from Orlando College. He was a police cadet for 2.5 years before joining the Orlando Police Department in 1973. And upon retiring as police commander some 40 years later, he then served his community as Orlando City Commissioner, representing District 6 from 2006 to 2020. His current and past affiliations are multitudinous and include the American Red Cross, Metro Plan Orlando Board of Directors, Orange County Health Department Community Health Improvement Board, the NAACP, National and Florida League of Cities, the National Florida Black Caucus of Local Elected Officials, the Tri-County League of Cities West Orange Chamber of Commerce, Omega Psi Phi Fraternity, and Vice President of Trusts for the World Conference of Mayors. And there you see it up on the screen with the soon-to-be conference in New Orleans, August 3rd and 4th, where Vice President Ings will be presiding with President Johnny Ford of the World Conference of Mayors. The Honorable Ings goes by the mantra, "The voices of all the people need to be heard." And Buddha, if you will, let's bring him up on the screen live and bid a warm welcome to former Commissioner Samuel B. Ings. Welcome, Commissioner.
Thank you, Dr. Fialkoff, and it's a pleasure and honor to be here on your show tonight.
Well, the pleasure is mine, and I was really visualizing when I read your bio, but I'd rather that you tell it and fill in the blanks. So I really feel this first question is so important. Tell us about the influence of both of your parents on your upbringing and your future life.
Well, you're absolutely right. The influence was great. It was powerful. It was very motivating, and it was very humbling as well. And my mother, she was a darling of an individual that took care of us and our family. And I might just say my father's mother, my grandmother, was the pastor of the church that I grew up in. And so my father, being that first black police detective for the city of Orlando, made a great difference in the city's history. Because that's when the inroads for blacks that were in law enforcement or on the police department began to intensify and grow. So this has been a very grateful time for me, because I did a lot to do what I can to help those citizens within the city of Orlando. And even as I can recall being a sergeant on the police department and working with our young people, specifically those that were suspended from school or expelled from school. We had a police community office right in the Paramore district that I was the supervisor of and in charge of. And so we would bring those kids off the streets into that police substation, and we would get homework from their middle school or high school, and they would work on that homework. So when they were able to go back into school, they were still on target. So that goes way back, and we still continue to work with our young people in so many different ways so that they can be productive citizens within our community.
Well, it's very interesting, because I grew up in a small town in Connecticut. And one of the things I remembered, because my father worked in the emergency room of the hospital as a doctor, and he knew a lot of the police. And one time I got in a little trouble, and the police were more like your uncle or, like your older cousin. And, they let you know what you did, and they had great discipline. But, it seemed like I really love hearing what you're saying, because it was a different era, and they believed in discipline, but learning from the error, not punishing and criminalizing, but making sure that you really learned. And I remember, I never forgot my father's face. He didn't even have to do anything more, and I really learned. So why is that I don't see that so much anymore? Does that still exist, or is that at the decision of a local precinct? What's happened to that type of policing, where the police is almost like the uncle and related to the family for that young kid?
Well, you're absolutely right. And it has diminished somewhat because I remember back in the day with my father, when he was a police officer, when he first joined the police department, that many of the residents, the neighbors, the citizens would call our house to speak with my father, to tell him who was responsible for burglary, who was responsible for robbery, who was responsible for murder, who was responsible for an assault and battery. So it was those kinds of relationships that we freely did and had in our communities. And now we have to look a little bit closer. And that's what I want to do, is to bring in more of this neighborhood policing within our police department, because that's very important to me. And I'm also a graduate of the FBI National Academy in Quantico, Virginia in December of 1992. So I spent some 3 months there with police executives throughout the United States and also the world, because we had some people from Japan and Alaska, even though Alaska is a part of the U.S., but we had some people from Japan that were also a part of the graduating class. And so there are probably about 250 of us officers throughout the United States and the world. But that FBI Academy was really great. It helped build great relationships. And even within the police departments, the police officers have to be police themselves through disciplinary actions and those kinds of things too, which helps to keep them in line. And training that officer constantly on how to deal with the public, how to deal with the people in the community is very important. And you know, for some people, it's very natural to have a relationship with others because they can relate. They are open for relationships. And there are others that are just so cold and hard that all they want to do is the business, whether it's to write you a ticket or to arrest you and put you in jail and send you on your way. I remember one time, Dr. Fialkoff, that I was riding in the car with a friend of mine, and we both were sergeants at the same time. And I said, "Look, there's my mother driving along the street." He said, "I bet you won't stop her and give her a ticket." I said, "I bet you I will." And so we stopped her. We put the lights on her. We stopped her, pulled her over. She was just as nice and respectful. She saw it was me, but she was respectful to me. And I said, "Now, I see your driver's license." And then I said, "You know why we stopped you? Because you were speeding." She said, "Well, I wasn't speeding." And I said, "Well, yes, you were. So let me go back to the car and get my ticket book." And so at that time, I came back to her, and then that's when I let her know that the joke was up, you know, that we were just playing around and trying to see if we could stop you and be firm with you as we would anybody else in the street. So it was really great.
That's a great story, and you know, it's an example of humanity, and to me, it's what we need to get more of in the world. So I wholeheartedly support your philosophy, because that's really what we need, not just in Orlando, but the whole country. And I want to ask you something, because as I was, you know, reviewing what we were going to be talking about, I see that there were some impacts in your community there of Orlando, where they shuttered the Grand Avenue Historic School and also destroyed this Tinker Field minor league ballpark. Tell us a little bit about how that happened and what you think the impacts have been.
Well, you know, and that's a great story for both of those situations, and specifically with Tinker Field. Tinker Field was a baseball stadium that was built in Orlando, and during the time of 1963, Martin Luther King came through, and at that time, blacks weren't allowed to sit in the grandstands of the stadium. They were only allowed to sit on the side stands or stand outside the ballpark along the fence to watch the baseball games. So you had many of your Major League Baseball teams to come into Orlando, because Orlando was a spring training facility and center for many of the baseball teams. And Babe Ruth, Hank Aaron, all of these guys came through Orlando at Tinker Field. So it was very historical. And especially when Dr. Martin Luther King spoke there, blacks were then allowed to sit in the grandstands in the main portion of the stadium. So I was fighting ever since I had been a commissioner since 2006 to not tear down but preserve and to improve upon the stadium itself. Because I had gone to Wrigley Field and I saw how they kept the main stadium and they built additions around that, even around towards the outfields. And that helped to bring in more fans for baseball. And that's what I wanted to create for Orlando, so that we would then again have a national baseball team to come into Orlando as a spring training facility. And then also Major League Baseball, I was talking with an umpire who said the umpire associations for Major League Baseball and Major League Baseball were interested in coming into Orlando and providing a Major League Baseball camp for the young ball players. And that's what I wanted to bring into Orlando. For the black kids, for the white kids, for the Asian kids, for the Hispanic kids, for all of the kids. That's what I really wanted. But the current mayor decided no, and through malfeasance and misfeasance and not upkeeping and refurnishing the stadium itself, it went into decay. And so the city council voted against me, so that they decided to tear down that Tinker Field. And that was a real travesty for me and also for the community itself. And the other thing, and remind me of that again.
Grand Avenue Historic School.
Grand Avenue Elementary School building. Thank you so very much. That was bringing in a charter school, which was the Knapp Ford Charter School, Knapp Ford Community Charter School. Knapp Ford was a former city commissioner with the Orlando City Council. So he had retired and then he had passed away. But there was this school that was in place to help these kids that were having problems with learning in the regular schools. And the regular schools would send the kids over to that charter school. And they would teach those kids and help those kids. Those kids would then learn and grow. Well, they were stationed in, their building was located in what is now called, in downtown Orlando, called Creative Village. Creative Village is a place that allowed the University of Central Florida, Valencia Community College, some apartments, some businesses to come in. So there was gentrification where the black people were moved out and all of these new buildings and businesses came in. Knapp Ford, where it sat, is where they were going to build the parking garage. So Knapp Ford had to be torn down. The Grand Avenue Elementary School building was going to go into the ACE school, a new school, K through 8, that was built on North Paramore area. Grand Avenue was in South Paramore. So when those students left Grand Avenue, it left the building vacant. And what I was championing was that we allow Knapp Ford Community School to go into the Grand Avenue School building so that they can still thrive and the students can learn within that community. Orange County has a policy of school of choice. So wherever you wanted to go to school, you can do it. If it's outside of the bus system within your neighborhood, then you would have to provide your own transportation. Well, these kids needed a place to go. And the city of Orlando, Netherwood Orange County Public Schools, allow those students to go into this school building, which was over 90 years old. So it was a historical building. As a matter of fact, it's a twin school. The Grand Avenue School building is a twin school to Princeton Elementary School. Princeton Elementary School is on the white side of town. So they have all the amenities and the same age of the buildings, but yet Princeton Elementary School got upgraded to modern capacity, full blast. Additional rooms, classrooms, everything. Parking facilities, everything. But Grand Avenue School stayed the same within its building. Now they did upkeep the building and made sure that it had adequate air conditioning and heating and all of those amenities. So the building was in great condition and a perfect building for Knapp Ford Community School to move into. Well, what do? They shutter the doors and not allow Knapp Ford Community School to go into the building. So that school then went over into West Orlando and joined with another charter school called Legacy Academy. And they were both related to each other, but they had separate charters. And so you still couldn't have two chartered schools in the same area under two different charters. And so Nap Ford Community School never had the opportunity to go into a place that they should have had the opportunity to go into and grow and thrive and help raise those little black children, those little black boys and girls. There were also some Hispanic students there. There were also some white students there at this charter school.
You know what? Your story is so important because we've forgotten in our culture, with all the technology and the emphasis on economics only, that economics comes first from people. Because without people, there is no economics, because nothing was going to happen without human endeavor. And we're all working together. And one of the things that you bring out that people need to listen to, and why what you're saying makes so much sense, is that, there's a heritage. And that heritage and that culture gives people pride, gives people substance, gives people integrity. And, when it's destroyed, I think our world needs to wake up that we're destroying more than just a structure or a building. There's a history, there's a pride that we're invalidating. It's called invalidating. It's suppressing, squashing. And by doing that, we create, I don't know how you feel about this, I think we create animosity, we create antagonism, we create bad feelings, we don't acknowledge somebody else's history, and we get violence. And we try to solve the violence with all these new regulations, ignoring, it's almost like treating someone for a disease, as I do as a doctor, and ignoring the cause. And I'm going to just ignore the cause of the disease, keep repeating the cause, but I'm going to keep giving this guy medicine because I can make money off of the medicine. And I don't know how you feel about what I just said, Commissioner.
Well, Doc, you're absolutely right, because here we lack the compassion for one another, and that's key. And for me, I'm about an inclusive Orlando. We have visitors that come in and visit in Orlando. But when you get outside of the theme parks, such as Disney World, Universal Studios, SeaWorld, Fun Spot, Gatorland, when you get outside of those areas, now we have those communities. And you see in the communities how people are living. And because you have no compassion for the people, you can't think of a comprehensive plan to deal with those situations in a very amenable way. And specifically, I kind of segue into a little bit of homelessness. And that is a true problem because it is about the very caring that you're talking about, Doc. It's about the very caring from the standpoint of trying to treat a problem, but yet the whole issue still continues to grow because you really haven't gotten to the root of the problem, to deal with the root of the problem and the situation. Because
that's so true. That's so true. What I was going to say, engineer, I think you have a video that the commissioner sent. Do you have that video ready? Why don't you get that video ready while he's talking and let me know, okay? Okay, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I know you sent a video regarding exactly what you're talking about that, goes over that. We're getting near the end of the show, and, what do you feel needs to happen to handle this homelessness, the drugs that we're seeing, and the violence that we're seeing?
Doc, that's going to take a whole nother show. But the number one problem with homelessness is addiction. That's the biggest problem. 68% of all cities throughout the United States say that the biggest problem in their area is homelessness. And then, of course, the second thing is domestic violence, which a lot of us don't realize. When that husband and wife are into it, either that That husband leaves and goes someplace which he normally won't do because he's the quote man of the house. So the woman has to take herself and the children and leave the house. Going where? Nowhere. They have no idea of where they're going. They have no money to take with them. They have no food to really take with them. And so that becomes a real problem for our community. And then, of course, mental illness is about the third thing that causes problems for homelessness. And then another is, of course, the job loss. Losing a job, you don't have any money. And the next thing is lack of affordable housing. You can't afford to live where you are now because the rents or the mortgage payments have gone up so high that you cannot afford it. And then when you do make money, you are underemployed because you don't have enough money to pay your rent, your utilities, food, transportation, clothing, everything for the family. And so that becomes a real problem. And then a lot of people from our veterans, post-traumatic stress. They come out of Afghanistan, they come out of Iran, they don't know what to do. But over 200,000 of our military men and women come out of these areas, and the numbers are growing. The numbers are growing. They have no place to go. They can't cope. They can't afford the rents. So we have to have a comprehensive plan on how we are going to take care of the homeless people. We can't just say we'll pluck them up out of the right of way, the sidewalks, of the streets, and put them where? Put them where? You have to have their housing that's available. And in order for them to get into the housing, you've got to deal with their mental capacities as well. You've got to deal with the addictions as well. So they need cleaning up. We've got to rebuild. We've got to rebuild our society, and we've got to rebuild those people that are being cast out or being left on the side of the roads to fend for themselves. And that's what they know. And that's what they do to create the kind of atmosphere that they feel like they're safe in. As I walked among the homeless people around the Lake Dot area in Orlando, the people were saying to me, the men and the women were saying to me, look, what we don't want to happen is that for people, and specifically the police, to come up to us and say, hey, look, you're trespassing. You need to go. Well, I have no place to go. But what I'd like to hear from them to say is, look, we got a job for you. And we want you to be able to go to work and to be able to get into some affordable housing so that we can get you off the streets. And that's why I say I have a comprehensive plan to deal with that, because we have to deal with it on a holistic system so that that individual is made whole from the top to the bottom and that they are renewed, because a lot of people need their mental capacities renewed so that they feel like they are somebody again. They need to feel that way. And of course, we have relationships in the family where all of a sudden the young people, the teenagers, they're too big for their britches. And so they get kicked out of the house. Where do they go? The streets. They have no other place to go but the streets. And that's a real problem.
This program has really been very complete. I wish we had, like you said, more time. We're probably going to have another show. But I really thank you for being on the show. And I think your solutions are right on the money. And they're humane. They're going to be long-lasting. And they're going to be inclusive. So I wish you much success. And because you have a very lucid and a very realistic, logical approach that can definitely help our country and I'm sure Orlando. So thank you again, Samuel B. Inks, for being on the show.
And you're so welcome, Dr. Fialkoff. And I just really want to say a better Orlando for everyone is my promise.
Well, thank you so much. And for those of you watching, let's heed the words a former commissioner and possibly the next mayor of Orlando, Samuel B. Ings. Let's work together. Let's have pride come back into our communities. Respect each other. Let's work together. Let's produce. Let's have real economy and caring. Until the next time, have a very good night.
This show was sponsored by A Time for Truth Foundation Incorporated as a community service.
Sometimes life can be so damn hard. You don't know where to go. Everything keeps falling apart. Yeah. You try to do your best, but only God knows that you've given everything you've got, but the world takes you down. You just keep moving on. Let your feet